I'll just tell a story. So when I was at West Point, nerds, if you don't know, I went to the military academy.
I know you'd never know it now.
I'm not very military with my Centauri shirt. With my hands are
very
I haven't
soft.
nerds. I haven't worked an honest
Mine are
day.
calloused.
I haven't worked an honest day since I left the Army. And so they had this kind of idea they would talk about at West Point called the loneliness of command. And they would say, look, there'll be times when you're leading your platoon or your company or later in your career, whatever, your battalion, whatever, and you will have to do something and you'll feel like it's right and people will question you and you may feel like you're completely alone.
Yeah.
And that's normal. And so...
And it's a good check, right? Like, again, when you're doing big things, it's not bad to have a few people dragging you down, making you re-question your thoughts. It's just whether you persevere. So go ahead with your story.
So this was kind of, it's one of those things in the ether. You hear about you're in school, but, I'm more like, let me just graduate. Okay, loneliness of command. I'm not in command, so, whatever. So I don't really think about it. And so some years pass. I'm the number 2 XO in a rifle company. And the number 1 man, his wife is pregnant, but she has an early pregnancy with a couple complications. Everything worked out fine, but he had to leave. And so now we're going to do a live fire. It's the whole company. It's about 120 people, and I'm in charge of this big thing. And because I had to step up to do this, I didn't have enough rank. They were going to let me lead it, but to actually shoot all these weapons for real, there needed to be a captain, and I was only a first lieutenant. And so they brought in a captain, great guy, who would go on to be a 4-star general, good friend of mine. And they brought him in. And so he said to me, he's like, look, I'm going to come in because they need a captain, but you're going to run this thing. So he was there, but we ran this exercise. And the last part of the exercise, which we're doing multiple times, but the last part is you put up a bunch of claymores, which are mines, and they're like small devices, and then you shoot them off. And anyway, as we did this, and it's middle of the night, one of the claymores didn't go off. And so everybody calls like, ceasefire, ceasefire. And so we're looking at this claymore, and so it's a mine.
Right.
And everybody's behind it, so we're safe because it's going to shoot this way. And I am like, let's wait a minute and see if it just blows up and explodes itself. And so it doesn't. And so, I look around, and there's the captain, and I say, what should I do? And he's like, look, it can go either way. This one's your call. Whatever you choose to do, I'll back you up. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And so he wanders off to talk to somebody who's trying to say, are we going to run this thing or is it over? And if it's over, we're going to say that's not safe, and we're going to get the bomb people to come and defuse the thing. And if we're going to say it's okay, then we're going to keep going. And that's my call, that this is going to be okay. It's just a dud. Everything's fine. And we're going to keep going and just assume that it's not dangerous. It's just a piece of garbage, right? And so I'm sitting there, and the captain's gone, and I'm trying to figure out what should I do. And the first sergeant comes up. And so he's the next ranking guy. And he's like, hey, sir, what's going on? And I'm like, well, you see right there, this claymore didn't go off. And he's like, yeah, roger, sir. It's a dud. Like, let's just, when you're ready, let's go. Let's do this thing. It's a dud. It's fine. We're going to be all right. And so he wanders off back to his position. And so I'm sitting there, and I know the captain said I could do whatever I want. The first sergeant thinks it's a dud, but if we get up there and go to remove it and somebody,
gets hurt.
So I'm like, I got to call this off. And so my radio guy's there, lower ranking guy helped me. I'm like, hey, call it off. And so he's like, roger, sir. And he calls it in. And as soon as he calls it in, everybody leaves. The helicopter leaves that was there in case there's a fire. The ambulance leaves. So within 2 minutes of me calling it off, you can't turn it back on. And so the whole night is blown, and there's going to be no more exercise. And then the bomb people come in and all this kind of stuff. And so I get up, and as I get up, the first sergeant comes running to me, and he's like, sir, what's going on? I just saw the ambulance leave. And I'm like, yeah, I called it off. We're calling in the bomb people. And he's like, what? I told you it's a dud. And he runs out to the mine, and jumps up and down on it. Like, look, see? And he's jumping up and down on it. And so it's immediately obvious. And there's probably like 20 soldiers around. It's immediately obvious that he's right and I'm wrong because he didn't blow himself up. He's literally jumping up and down on the mine.
That is a man who is sure of himself.
And so I'm like, here I am, acting as the commander. My senior guy is jumping on this mine, going, see? The soldiers who knew me for a year or so were like, oh my God. And they're looking, they're trying to not add to my embarrassment. And so they just start walking off. And I just remembered from West Point the loneliness of command. And I just looked at him and I just turned around and walked off down the hill, completely and utterly alone. And about maybe 10 to 20 seconds later, he runs up to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder. And he's like, sir. And I turn around and he's crying. And he's like, sir, I don't know what got into me. I should be supporting you out here. And I can't believe I did that. Will you forgive me? And I'm like, I'm just glad you didn't blow yourself up. And I gave him a big hug. But in this literature that Cindy's talking about, narcissists are a little bolder than average. And you need that because there's going to be times when if you're the boss, you are going to feel completely alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, so first of all, I want to go back to the story. So I know you took it as trying, like, preserving but these are people who you just decided you're more important than an exercise. Any one of your lives is more important than an exercise. And we're not going to go through with something that might not be safe just to complete the exercise. Like, that's not worth a human being's life. Like, I would be grateful that somebody who is my commanding officer would take that perspective.
And that is the way that night I erred on the side of being conservative. This first sergeant who I'm describing, he's not crazy and he's not a bad or reckless man.
Well, he was that night.
That time I had been in the Army for 4 years and he'd been in the Army for probably 16.
Sure, but he jumped on a claymore. That was reckless.
If you think about the expert schema, what he would argue is he looked at it, he told me, sir, it's a dud, let's keep going. And he moved on. And
I hear this conversation a lot with guns. I'm an expert. I know there's no bullet in here. And the next thing you know, the person has shot themselves.
Yeah.
So like
I didn't get in any trouble for choosing the conservative.
Yeah, I get that. But I'm just saying that if I have a leader who makes a decision that is basically choosing to not potentially wait, no matter how small a percent, choosing to not waste my life for an exercise, like, this is like levels of magnitude, right? Like, it may be a small percent, but the cost is huge. Somebody's life for something stupid. We risk lives all the time for things that are important, but for an exercise, like, to me, that's got to be the decision. And I also think you're an interesting contrast, right? Like, you're talking about the loneliness of leadership and basically sticking to your guns even when, like, nobody is really in sync with you, or, like, at least you're not getting, like, verbal support. And to some degree, a narcissist is going to be better at doing that because they have a stronger belief that they are right. That the aggrandizement is going to lead them to believe that they're right. And in your case, I think that worked, but you could argue that the guy jumping on the claymore was also just as adamant about being right. And in that case, he got lucky, but maybe he needed to listen a little bit more. So you see the line of where, like, narcissism could be, and I'm not saying you're narcissistic, you're not, and I'm not saying he's narcissistic, but when you're getting a narcissist, they believe that they're better at doing things, and so they trust themselves more than anybody else.
Yes.
And they often don't listen to what other people say. And so they can bear the loneliness of leadership better.
Yes.
But there is a line where that becomes a problem.
No question. And the captain told me, it's fine. We're going to be okay. And then the first sergeant told me we'd have done the exercise. But he didn't. And had he said, you can't do this, we would never be having the conversation. But it was the combination of somebody able to, or I was trying to absorb the input and absorb the feedback. I don't think that because of my sensitivity to people, I don't think I'm a psychology narcissist.
You're not.
But from the handbrake,
you're not even
taking risks.
You're not high on that.
But that night, it would have been nice to be a little bit more self-aggrandizing. It would have hurt a little bit less. Did I bounce back? Of course I did. Wasn't that big a deal. Nobody thought I did wrong. Even 15 seconds later, the guy who made a big scene about it was crying and saying he was sorry. So
and that, by the way, is also an example of somebody calling you out in futility. Right, the ambulance was the helicopters were already gone. The thing was already called off. So like the whole incident happened for no good reason.
Sure, and it took him a whole 15 seconds. To realize.
And it was a quick repair because he had a great track record with you.
And the soldiers couldn't have been nicer about it. And the captain never told me. He never said a word about it. He saw the whole thing. And he never said a word about it.
Well, you see, you say that like you're implying that he wouldn't have done the same thing. And again, it's an exercise. It's not essential that exercise happened that night. It's expensive it got called off, but less expensive than a human life.
Yep. All right. Some of these nerds are going to be like, hey, it was the Army. Shouldn't they take some risks?
Yes, when it's necessary.